Good afternoon. Today we're going to go over building an iPad case. I have a customer that wants a cover for a big one. So it's 11 5/8 by 8 7/8. So what I've done is I've created a pattern here. What I measured the iPad will fit in the center, and then you give an inch on each side so that it can slide in. I also put a minus 1 inch cover on the front and then a flap on the back. So I already put it on the leather with a pencil after I traced it out. And you always have to make sure when you're laying out that you don't have blemishes. I like to put the pencil line on the inside mostly. Sometimes I do it on the right side, but you have to be careful that you're gonna not make any wayward marks. When I'm creating a new pattern, put it on the back so if you have to erase any lines, then you can. Okay, I have finished cutting this out, but I did catch something before I cut it out off camera, and that was when I folded up my pattern, I had a gap on the top. So I wanted to, thank goodness I checked before I started cutting, but I added a 2-inch section on the bottom. That's the perfect thing about patterns, is you don't make mistakes if you use your pattern. So I readjusted this, cut it out, and then let me show you how I put the lines on here for the fold marks. I'll measure up. I know I have a 11 5/8 inch iPad, so that's the center section here. This is 12 inches, and then I also have a 10 inches on the bottom, which will be that flap that comes up. This is what I'm building, but a bigger one. So you see this flap, I have the new size is 10 inches, this back size 12 inches, and then I have a flap, which is, I believe, is 8 inches. So then I fold them on those lines, like that, fold it up, make sure there's no gap right here. That's where I was having that little gap right there. So now I know I'm good. So what I want to do next is get these patterns on here so that I know where my drawing area is going to be. So right here, this is the bottom. I line that edge up, and I've made a fold line right here, and then I've made a fold line right here. So then I have that transposed on the back side. You don't want to put the lines on the right side. Put it on the back side. So when you're folding this before stitching, you know where that goes, okay? Then what I'll do is I'll take a little tick just from this side. I'll tick it right there on the very edge right there. Tiny. That's going to get cut off from the when you do the edging. You'll never see that tick mark. But that shows me what the bottom line is so that I know where to put my pattern, okay? Do the same thing on the top. Little tick mark here so that you know where your drawing area is. Now, this could be anything. This can be a drawing anything. This client that I have is one of my fly fishing clients. So he wants a steelhead and a rainbow trout on his. So through the years, I've created many fish patterns. So I go into my old fish patterns first, unless he wants something specific, and I'll find a steelhead or a trout, you know, whatever. See, there's one right there. And it might not be big enough, but this is where I start to see if I have another pattern. You know, they're all different because I paint them all different. But this is a good starting point, so I don't have to redraw it every single time I make a new article. So I'll go through this package piece and find the perfect ones, and if I can't find what I want, then I'll make a new pattern, okay? I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. After going through the patterns, I have decided, because this one looks pretty good sitting on here like this, and that side is supposed to be the rainbow. I'm pretty happy with making this a singular rainbow and changing it just a little bit. But then on the back side, you know, because this is a big area here, this is the size of my area, this little pattern isn't big enough. That's not big enough for me. I'm going to redraw that. You know, I really like this style of trout. So, you know, all trout are different. They all have different fin counts and all, and not fin counts, but the little blades on their fins. I can't remember the technical word, but they all have different little nuances. So I always look up steelhead, make sure that the fin is going to be correct. I know that a lot of people don't catch, but they're taking a picture of a caught fish. The hatchery trout. This is a adipose fin, okay? A hatchery trout will have this clipped off, and it's a huge thing for me to have a correct fish. I don't really want a hatchery fish on my gear, so I make sure it's a wild fish. So that's something about drawing the fish that you have to be pay attention to. A lot of people don't know how to draw, and so I have from the like the Oregon Fish and Wildlife, they have little diagram things on their websites of fish, all the different types, so you can see that the browns are bigger than the rainbows, and all that kind of stuff. And then you can see the color too. So I use these in reference, but when I'm starting to color them, what I like to do is I have huge collection of fish reference on Pinterest, or I'll use a client's caught fish, because they're all different. Every rainbow has different, their polka dots are all completely in different spots. So, use a ton of fish reference. It's not just, I know a rainbow has a pink stripe, they all have like little nuances. So as much reference as you can get. And like when I was doing the osprey for this case, I had probably 10 photographs that I was using to see how their wing coloring was, what their head was when it was at a certain point. I don't ever like, okay, I'm going to copy off somebody's exactly. That's plagiarism. I don't believe in plagiarism. So use at least 3 different photographs when you're doing a drawing, so that it's yours. You don't want to copy. Also, static fish. A lot of people have photographs of fish that they've caught and they're laying on the shore, and they take a quick photograph of it. So when they do a painting of it, they'll put gravel behind the fish. It's like, well, is that a dying fish? I don't want a dying fish on my case. I want him to make him look alive. So I'll put a little bit of a turn to him. His background will always have water, or splashing bubbles, or some kind of water plant or something like that in the background. I want a live fish. That's why fishermen are excited about fishing, because they want live fish. Otherwise, go to the store and buy a fish. That's my rant for today anyway about fish and design. So I will set up to start doing a drawing, and I'll show you how to do that, okay? Okay, now then, I want to show you what I do. First I take my pattern, because you always stick to that, right? This is the front flap, okay? So I know I have this old pattern, and I'm going to put it on here, but you see it could be a little larger, So I'll redraw this, just the bottom fish, so that it fits in that space. So, hey, luckily, look at this. Regular sheet of printer paper. It almost fits on there perfect. Yeah, it's a little smaller, but that's okay, because the flap's going to meet up here. So what I'll do is I'll line that up, and then I'm going to put this where this flap lays, just like that. That way I know I can put this fish right here, okay, on my pattern. So we'll start that one in a minute, but I also want to show you, here's the back, okay? Printer paper, again, I love using. It's cheap, and since I'm not using it over and over and over again, the only time I ever really make a vellum pattern is when I know that I'll probably use that pattern multiple times, like when I'll do like multiple fish. I can flip that vellum back and forth or twist it around, but so my very favorite designs I'll put in vellum, but most of them I just do a couple of times, so I'll make it out of printer paper. If I want that to last, I'll do one, I'll put packing tape on the back so that I can do it multiple times and it won't deteriorate, because some of them get holy. Anyway, so this was a little short, so I taped it together. I always use blue tape, because if I have to flip this design, because I'm not happy with it, I can still write on blue tape. I can't write on plastic tape, so that's why I use blue tape. So I get it the same size, okay? And then I know, all right, I'm going to put down top so that I don't get it mixed up, okay? And then I'm going to fold it in half, too, so I know where the center of it is. That way I can line it up the way I want to. All right, so that's center. I know it's a blank canvas, and then what I do is, I told you I have that idea that I kind of like this fish, but I can't just plop it on there, right? Yeah, it would fit, but not very, not very sexy. So here's my Pinterest account, and I do recommend, if you want to go into my stash, friend me on Pinterest, follow me on Pinterest. I have, I think, 30 or 40,000 posts, something at this point. You're very welcome to go in and use my stash, and then you don't have to go hunt and search as many years as I have. So I found a steelhead one here. So I'll just look at the measurement. See, I noticed that this fin on the bottom, like I said, I don't memorize all the fin names, I'm sorry, but the fin on the bottom always sits behind the dorsal fin, okay? So if you have a line on there, this one's going to be ahead of this one on a steelhead, okay? They got a pretty wide tail. See, there's different tail marks. This is a rainbow. It's got a different tail than a steelhead, all right? So some of them are just round on the back like that, like a trout. Steelhead, they kind of have a little bit of a bump on the back, kind of like this. That's why I kind of know it's a steelhead. There's a little bump there, okay? So I'm going to use that when I'm designing here. I still haven't really figured out how I'm going to put it on there, but I think I'm just going to do a little tail flip. So if I want a tail flip, and I know I want him to be on there, maybe I'll just make a line like this. All right, like a fish hook. That's kind of what I want a tail flip. So I've done these before, and it's so I can kind of go from scratch. But they're a torpedo, so I know their bodies are going to be long and ovular. Ovular? Yeah. And then I'll put the head on. Okay. And I know the center of his body is where his dorsal fin's going to be. Kind of like that. And I know this one's going to be over here in the back. And then I'll continue with the tail. Now I know this is really hard to teach somebody, right away how to do this. Okay, so the best thing I can tell you is to look at a lot of fish and to draw and draw and draw. I've done a lot of these, so it's not quite as daunting as it used to be. And if you're doing a fish, it's not flat when it flips, right? That's why we're doing this. So this is not going to be on his back anymore. The adipose is going to be inside because you're looking at the top of his tail more, So you're going to kind of want to think about what angle that you're going to see this at, right? I know you're probably going, what? How do you differentiate between all those lines? This is my rough, okay? So what you can do is do a rough, and then he's swimming. So when I imagine when a fish is swimming and they push down when they're flipping, okay? So think about, see, that's why I put the fins down, because they're pushing down and pushing over. So you don't want him, like, if he's leaping, he'll fold his fins in. So I'm gonna make this one so that he's doing a little bit of a downward push on his fin. Now I'm looking at my reference as I'm drawing this. Even though, you know, I've done a lot of these, I still want to see where I'm going wrong, right? So, I know this is a rough, but when I start carving, then I'll do a little bit more refined. Okay. See, so that's what I got now. Alright. Okay, this is what I have so far. It looks like it needs to be cleaned up quite a bit. So let me show you how to clean this drawing up now that we have a rough sketch. Okay? Haha, welcome to the jungle. Annie doesn't have a light table, so guess what? We can use a window as a light table. Alright, so here's my pattern that I've drawn up that we just went over. Alright, another way you can check to see if you like how the fish sits is you can flip it over and see what it looks like. This is the same thing as looking in a mirror. A lot of artists will do that with their paintings, is look in the mirror and see if you like it. Okay, there's a couple of things that I'm going to change on here when I do this final pattern, because this is the rough. So I'm going to put this right here. Alright, I know that I wasn't happy initially anyway, because this is way down here. Okay, actually let me put this piece up a little bit higher. So this was too far to the bottom, and this, you know, it got this much gap on the top. So what I'm going to do is, with my other piece, this is going to be my final pattern. I'm going to put this where I want it, where I want that fish, okay? This, you don't really have to do this. You could do this on the leather, but I'm trying to demonstrate to you that patterns are alive in themselves because they change, you know? You don't want it to be static. So I'm using it, I'm lining up where I want this to fish, or fish to line up, okay? So there, all right? We got a sheet over a sheet. I'm just going to continue drawing this the way I want it and adjusting it as I go. And then when I'm done with it, I will show you what I've done, okay? Okay, after tracing it, I've just changed a couple of little things to my design. You see, I've put this a little bit farther back. I've changed the tail a little bit more comfortable for me. And I've added some more detail up here in his head. So now I feel like he's done, and we can go on to the next step. But this concludes the design portion of the iPad case. And next we'll go into the carving section, which will be a separate video. That'll be next on the list, okay? See you soon.